Hi there, this is Shen Minghuan, and today I'm going to introduce the company investigation of Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC. And this is my outline. First, I will give the introduction of the investigation, and we have include the 5C analysis and SWOT analysis. In the end, we have 5 forces analysis. So introduction here. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, is the original equipment manufacturer for the high-quality wafer in order to make the high-quality chips, such as the mobile device or your laptop inside with the CPU. Those chips are made by TSMC. And TSMC currently is the world leader in the technology of 5-nanometer manufacturing process. And talking about the manufacturing process, the smaller of the manufacturing process for the integrated circuit design, which is the IC design, when the smaller it goes, it can make the chips more powerful, more efficient. But in the other hand, making smaller manufacturing process also required a better yield rate, because the smaller you made, the more trouble you got. So maintaining the better yield rate and with the mass development is an important thing for the semiconductor manufacturing. Currently, Samsung and Intel was the competitor, but overview in the stage of 5 nanometer, such as Intel had already given on in the stage in the 7 nanometer and turned on to cooperate with TSMC to make their CPU in the future. And Samsung keeps developing the 5 nanometer technology, and they keep focusing to make the research maybe next year or 2022 to develop the 3 nanometer manufacturing process. So in 5C analysis here for the introduction of the TSMC, it established in 1987 in the headquarters in Hsinchu Science Park in Taiwan. And TSMC is only focused in producing the chips, which there's a requirement whether for AMD or Intel, and they make the chips for them. So TSMC individually is not designing the IC chip or produce or sell it as on their own products. And TSMC manufactures semiconductor cover very wide range. So I've given an example for all the CPU and IC designs, the auto device, any electrical device, whether you use chips, it need the TSMC technology to help those IC design companies to make this dream come true. So the using the market, including in the wire field, so such as mobile device and high performance computing, such as the Intel CPU, and automotive electronics, and also is very famous in the Internet of Things for those cloud computing for those devices. The ARM structure of CPU, they all require TSMC to help them to make their products. And TSMC has already made 12 million of 12-inch equivalent wafer, which is the material to make the chips in 2019. So here, competitor previously, which is you can count as the last year, Intel still the competitor, but it already given up in the 7 nanometer development and cooperate with TSMC now. So we don't count the Intel inside this competition. So the main competitor for TSMC right now is Samsung. And between these two, for the industrial studies, TSMC now is the world leader of the foundry manufacturer, and Samsung is the world leader of the memory chip manufacturer, which they also makes the chips, and they also produce the memory, which TSMC doesn't have the ability to make their memory products. They only help people to make their chips product. And for the manufacturing process, in a 10 nanometer 3D FinFET, which is the technology, it given the mass production in the end of 2016, which is by that time is faster than Intel, and I believe is 14 nanometer technology by that time when the Intel is actually using. And goes to 2018, the 7 nanometer 3D FinFET, which is already made. And by that time, Apple A12 CPU is exclusively functioning in 2018 Q1. So Apple is actually the main client to TSMC with the 7 nanometer technology used for their A12 CPU chips. And currently, they're not they're actually producing 5 nanometer of the MP, which is the manufacturing factory, and they're actually starting the mass production now. And for Apple, newer CPU actually, or AMD, they're actually going to use in the 5 nanometer technology. And in the future of 3 nanometer 3D FinFET, which is the future, is they're still developing because they require the technology, they require the research team. So currently they're working very hard with that. And how about the Samsung? So the same time of the 2018, the 7 nanometer 3D FinFET of the mass productions start at 2018. So it's actually going the same time with the TSMC. And in that cases, we can know that I believe it's Apple iPhone 6s release, and it include the CPU chip made from Samsung and TSMC, which the quality is also there's a differences. And I'm not going to tell how difference between that, but by that time people are trusting like TSMC can make the better computation for the Apple A12 CPU. So look at the Apple A12 CPU. They are in the same structure but different company of the technology, which is the quality rate they made. TSMC also giving the better quality so you can make the CPU run faster. And for the 5 nanometer 3D FinFET, and Samsung claim they're not developing, but actually they're giving up in the 5 nanometer 3D FinFET. So currently 5 nanometer mass production is not going to be using in Samsung, which is they still giving the mass production in 7 nanometer, and they will skip the 5 nanometer to 3 nanometer in the future, which is there's only one manufacturer made 5 nanometer technology for the client to build their chips. So for manufacturing process, which we have mentioned, 7 nanometer had already produced 1 million of the 12-inch wafer, and 5 nanometer is now expanding for production capacity, which is they're currently working now for maybe the next generation of Intel or AMD or Apple CPU. We're using the 5 nanometer technology. And for TSMC, they currently focus in the 3 nanometer development, and also building a team for research for the future of the 2 nanometer or 1 nanometer. Maybe after 10 years it will come true, which is they go step by step. And for 7 nanometers client, we have Apple, AMD, Qualcomm, Intel, so on. And 5 nanometer right now, which is TSMC already got the client from Apple, AMD, and Xilinx. So conclusion here for TSMC. So for last year, which is 2019, already full load in 7 nanometer production, and 5 nanometer has been started currently right now, 2020, and there's no competitor. And the order for from the AMD stopped increase in 2020, which because there's no one making 5 nanometer of the technology in the market, so only TSMC has the ability to build it. So for a SWOT analysis here for strength for TSMC, TSMC teamwork strategy in the semiconductor industry has a strong support and benefit with the local company, which in the area of Hsinchu, there's a lot of factoring support, whether providing silicon, whether providing the machine to work on wafer while they produce the robotic arms, so on. There's a lot of company support in the same area, so when they need to make a conversation, it's very convenient and it goes very fast, and you don't need to cost more to fly around the world for the discussion. And for TSMC, they conclude the best employees from Taiwan, which is the best student goes TSMC mostly. So their quality should be very good for this company. Also, uh, can have ability to compete with other worlds manufacturers such as Samsung, and has better upstream and downstream industrial in the cooperation. So it's like a same thing with the local company things. They support each other, and they also give benefit to upstream or downstream industrial. So TSMC can known as the professional OEM, which is original equipment manufacturer, and they make very good quality of semiconductor. Moreover, they also giving benefit to upstream and downstream industrial, which because they make the good things, so people want the good stuff from TSMC, and money will come in, and all those material supplier will give more supply to TSMC, so they also make money. So yes, giving benefit of the upstream and downstream industrial, and it's very flexible and high efficiency production and low cost because Taiwan is given not very much salary as maybe American does, and but it's high enough for this Taiwanese, so the production will be lower cost. And as you know, in the same location of the company of the upstream and downstream industrial, so they actually got very close to each other, so they give support. They don't need to spend a lot on their cost, so it worked very fast and it can cut down for the production. And it in this area of the manufacturing process, it's very high level technology, which is very hard to build a smaller manufacturing process. Like from 7 nanometer to 5 nanometer, there's a big step. So it's from 5 nanometer to 2 nanometer, there'll be another big step. Otherwise, Samsung will not be like just, they can be very easy to develop in 5 nanometer. Otherwise, they won't skip it in this battle and jump into the next battle, which is the 3 nanometer. So it's required very high professional technique here. And for TSMC weakness, there's not product innovation because TSMC doesn't design and they doesn't sell it as their own brand. They just help people to make their chips. So it doesn't have any information. So whether there's requirements and TSMC will do it, but there's no more extras line. Like there will be some company like selling the chips for or IC design, or there's some special technology. No, TSMC is not providing that. They just make do one thing for very profession. And it's lack of self brand and efficient marketing channel. So since they are the only channel, so they're just producing the chips and for all those requirement, which is the customer. So this is only one way to make their market. So there's no other marketing channel. And it's lack of talent to for the high frequency wireless communication development, such as IC design. So people such as AMD or Quantum Leos Dynamics, they make their IC design finish and require TSMC to make it to them for using like 5 nanometer uh, manufacture process to make their chips. But you know, designing their own product, which is the CPU, becomes a lot of benefit also. And TSMC is not doing that, so they don't have their own team to make their product, such as the IC design team or other things. Otherwise, they have very good technology to make the chips. They actually can collect a team and make their own bread, but TSMC is not actually doing that right now. And profession related to system on chips, design, and packaging, and testing, the TSMC is not also doing that. They give in other manufacturer, which is the downstream and manufacturer for the packaging and testing. They're not doing that by their own. Otherwise, they can give in more cost down in when they are making the chips. So, but it gives benefit to upstream or downstream industrial, which is another good thing. But it actually count as the weakness for the TSMC. So the threat here for TSMC, the OEM from Korea, which is the Samsung, and there's also Singapore and China. There's some industrial also making the semiconductor chips, but they are competitive in this field of the semiconductor industrial, which is the threat to TSMC. But TSMC, I believe, is strong enough. It won't cost too much, but it also count to be a threat. And for those IC design in Israel or Europe manufacturer are catching fast because they will have ability to make their own chips. They won't actually need the requirement from TSMC, which is TSMC already the best in the world. But I believe someday they will still catching up. They have power for developing skill. They can make the same level of quality as TSMC as it does. Maybe it will come true some days, but right now currently it's impossible. For wireless communication technology require high level technique in development, which is TSMC does that. So they also is lacking experience in a unique point, which is count as threat because they're only one channel. It doesn't have other technology or others marketing channel for their own marketing. And opportunity here, so increased number of digital consumer market in the world. There's a lot of electronic device such as cameras. There's laptop. There smartwatch, smartphones. All those marketing require chips. So it will be more and more requirement and gives opportunity for more production to TSMC and also increase number of making parts of the information appliance, which is with a smart home. In the future, maybe you clap your hand or speak a sound, the artificial intelligence with all those computation requirements needs the chips, which needs the CPU from maybe AMD, from NVIDIA, or all those ARM chips are the client to TSMC, so it's an opportunity here. And the industrial alliance strategy with the technology transformation they're making the team. So for the such as for packaging, for testing, they're making the team as the ally. So there should be an opportunity here when others manufacturing require the technology to TSMC, maybe upstream or downstream industrial will give the production to TSMC also makes benefit to each others. So also increased number of orders for integrated device manufacturers. So between each other for those collaboration to TSMC, TSMC provide the technology to make their chips with better quality. It also gives benefit with each other. So those are opportunities. So here are the 5 forces in analysis. For the evaluation computer, here we have the Samsung for the main computer, and in this marketing, the concentration is very high, which is there's a lot of requirements. There's always devices, there always CPU requirement, they always have a lot of requirement from IC design in the future. And switching cost, which is you don't actually easily to switch the technology, like for example, 7 nanometer to 5 nanometer from A manufacturer to B manufacturer. You totally almost is not actually can make like the same quality or they're making the same technology as TSMC does. So switching cost is very high. And but since the technology requirement is very high, they also for the marketing is not a situation which is right now we can think as the world leader is only TSMC and Samsung, and we expected maybe before we have Intel, but it should be more. But right now, just two of them, which is very low for the certification of market demand. Um, the identify whether substitute products are a threat. Here, the sub more right now, there's a lot of devices require TSMC to make their chips, the CPU. So it should be facing very good production in the future. And right now, there's no actually a clear threat for this industrial for TSMC. But for long term here, if the quantum computer, which is the quantum computer, change the way of the calculation, it's very different than the IC chips, which is very different than the CPU calculation. The logistics is different. The working strategy is different. So quantum computer, when a quantum computer comes to the commercial use, it should be the threat here. The example, the bargaining power of the buyer here, we can say the IC design company, which does a lot, and the credit requirement requires very high and it's not satisfied, which is they still have a lot of requirement for IC design to make, for example, the chips go faster and should be more efficient, should be more powerful in the futures. And the brand identification advantage and project leader inducement advantage, which is TSMC also people know this is the good brand, this is the company who makes the best chips in the world, who makes the best quality, and they will give the lower cost also. So people to TSMC will directly just require TSMC to help them to make their own product, which is when other companies are giving like lower salary. It's just the thought like for those for us for those us the IT, which is the student graduate from the major of computer science will like to go to Google to be an employee, which is the best company. Also, it feels the same to the TSMC. When TSMC require people and with the higher salary, um, and also TSMC is the best company, and maybe in thought of Taiwanese, and people will first choose the TSMC to be the employees or to be their um, requirement, which is to ask TSMC to make their chips. Um, the access here of the new customer architect is higher capital requirement and lower learning curve because this is very hard technology. This is not 1 day or 2 day to build. The thing was that stable and you can make the better yield rate, you can make that good quality, you can come to technology very understanding very soon. It's not like that, so it require long learning curve. Is actually the profession to be a profession, which is only certain people will do this, or certain people will study very hard to come in to this company to make their technology goes better, which is a very long learning curve. And for the third point for the brand education and advantage and project leader inducement advantage is it is the same thing as the previous. People love or people will their first thought with all the TSMC is the best uh, semiconductor manufacturing in the world, and people are willing to require the TSMC. For the evaluate of the bargaining power of the supplier, uh, so there's a lot of suppliers here, but the main thing for the wafer is the silicon chips, which is material for the wafer, and the concentration is very high, which is in Taiwan or in Japan. There's a lot of people like giving the material. So the supplier we have like FKS and MES, ESH, etc. There's also a lot of suppliers for making the wafer for the robotic arms and um, for the environment, for the software programming. There's a lot of supply chains, but the main thing is here for the silicon chips. So this is a little bit analysis for the TSMC, and this is my presentation. Thank you very much.